test. The PCR test, which in its essence looks for any microscopic bit of what you're looking for. And by
as we've discussed on the show,
I have to do it again. I have to keep saying it. I have to keep saying it. The only way you can find it is if it's called a spin. You spin it up, and the standardized number of cycles is 30. Because if you spin it up too much, well, why don't we listen to the inventor of the PCR test, who sadly died last year. The coincidence and the inconvenience of it. This is in 1993, and he's also a Nobel Prize winner in chemistry. His name is, I think it's Mullis. I think that's it, Kary Mullis. Here's what he said about the PCR test and how they work from the horse's mouth.
How do they misuse PCR?
And by the way, this question is being asked in relation to HIV, which is very similar to this scam.
To estimate all these supposed free viral RNAs that may or may not be there.
I think misuse PCR is not quite. I don't think you can misuse PCR. No, the results, the interpretation of it. See, if you can say, if they could find this virus in you at all, and with PCR, if you do it well, you can find almost anything in anybody. It starts making you believe in the sort of Buddhist notion that everything is contained in everything else, right? I mean, because if you can amplify one single molecule up to something that you can really measure, which PCR can do, then there's just very few molecules that you don't have at least one single one of them in your body, okay? So that could be thought of as a misuse of it, just to claim that it's meaningful. And it is. No, there's very little of what they call HIV, and what's been brought out here by Phil Pott and Isai already, the measurement for it is not exact at all. It's not as good as our measurement for things like apples. An apple is an apple. You know, you can get something that's kind of like, if you got enough things that look kind of like an apple and you stick them all together, you might think of it as an apple. But and HIV is like that. Those tests are all based on things that are invisible, and the results are inferred in a sense. PCR is separate from that. It's just a process that's used to make a whole lot of something out of something. That's what it is. But it's not. It doesn't tell you that you're sick, and it doesn't tell you that the thing you ended up with really was going to hurt you or anything like that.
Okay, so do we understand what he's saying? He's saying everybody's got something of everything in them, and if you just turn it up and amplify it enough, you can say, oh, you have it, and you're going to die. But it could be a single molecule that you've, by abusing the cycles, can then amplify.
Spinning that swab.
Yes, so I have in my possession here, and
by the way, I think we should have some cartoons. You take the swab and you put it on the end of a drill.
That's right.
And shove that down someone's nose.
That's not quite where the spinning takes place, but okay. That takes place in the assay.
Oh, you're talking about the centrifuge.
Yes, the assay.
I think the spinning.
I like it. I think it's funny. So I have in my possession and posted in the show notes a camera shot of the most recent, just received, I think 2 days ago, from our anonymous lab technician. The Thermo Fisher assay. Thermo Fisher, big lab. And I'm looking at it right now. It's the setup, how you're supposed to set it up. And there it is. How many cycles do they recommend? 45. Where the standard is 30. It may not mean much to us, but to lab technicians, they will scratch their head and say, because you can cycle up anything you want. Now, listen to Mrs. Kerkhove of the World Health Organization as she is asked about PCR tests by the media. Now, with this in mind, remember, these are being sent, these assays with the setup instructions of 45 cycles. These are being sent to lab technicians, certainly in the United States, but I presume all over the world. And with that in mind, listen to her answers.
Maria, one of our viewers is saying, if PCR test is not accurate, is there any new test to check out for COVID-19? You did mention there are new rapid tests. Maybe we can also explain to viewers how many different type of tests are there and what do they measure?
Let me correct something first, though, because we see the part of the question was PCR are not accurate. PCR tests are accurate. PCR tests are very, very accurate. They are highly credible. That is what is being used globally. So please let's clarify that.
So let's just make sure, because we know people are questioning these tests, but they're highly accurate. This is accurate. This is you cannot question that they're accurate. No mention of how they're being used.
What we were trying to highlight were the number of ways in which they can be used and how they should be used. But please be assured, PCR tests are accurate. There are different types of tests. So the PCR tests are looking for the RNA, these pieces of the virus that you are infected with. And there's lots of PCR assays that are available. And as Mike was describing, part of the goal of the consortium of WHO was to make sure that the right tests went to the right countries to utilize the machines that were in country. I was amazed by this because it isn't just about we have 100 million tests or 26 million tests or whatever it is. It's about getting the right test to the right technician in the right lab in that country.
So what she does not explain is why it sounds to me like she's saying it's different tests for different countries, for different labs, and she's making it sound like that's because the lab is different or their machines are different. The way I hear it now with this knowledge is we got to make sure we send the ones that show the false positives to the countries who want to shut down.
Well, that's what they're doing, aren't they?
Yes, but it's disgusting. And nobody is questioning this except for, people who are told to shut up and get deplatformed.
Only the deplatformed duo.